Hey guys, Steve Cottle back here again. This is video number 3 of my post trail hike of the Sheltowee Trace trail. I've been home this week and just completed the trail, 333 miles across Kentucky through the Daniel Boone National Forest and through the Big South Fork down into Tennessee. And I'm going to run through this video real quick today. A lot faster than I normally did because I want to cover a lot of gear. I want to talk about shoes today and what worked for me and what didn't work for me. And I want to talk about stockings, and then I want to talk about what I carried in my backpack with me along the trail this year. Again, let me make a point to say this. There's no perfect way of, I believe, there's a right way or wrong way. I think it's just a big personal preference of what works for you. What might work for me didn't work, might not work for you if you're getting ready to do a big trail. But I want to say this. A lot of people ask me what I did to train for this hike. And on the first section, started back last February of this year, I started in the Cave Run lake area. And I'm just going to be frank and be real here. I had hiked about 10 miles with a full backpack that first 10 miles, and I stopped on the trail and had to just be reasonable with myself to say I just didn't even think I was going to be able to complete the trail. I ended up doing, I think, probably 16, 17 miles that first weekend, and I had never really hiked consecutively that many miles. I don't even remember as a serving in the U.S. Army. And a side note, today's Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. But I don't think that I had ever done a 17-mile day in the U.S. Army. And as a career police officer, I surely didn't do any of that kind of training, even when I was in the police academy. So I had to do some real hard research about what kind of a gear and equipment I was carrying. And I also had to make a decision that I needed to get in the gym. And frankly, I had never been in the gym in my life. I joined Planet Fitness in Winchester, Kentucky for $10. And I ended up, hey John, there's a through hiker, the Sheltowee Trace trail this past year, or it was a year before, wasn't it, John? Thanks for what you jumping on here watching. He's a big buddy with Brian Carpenter, a guy I used to go to church with and still stay somewhat in contact with, and those two guys hiked that trail together. But I had to get in the gym, and so I joined Planet Fitness, and I started working out 4 days a week, and I never really lifted a lot of weights or anything, but I mean, I hit the treadmill and all the cardio stuff, and that was the game changer for me. Once I built up my legs, I was able to hike these big miles every weekend without just being miserable and pain and suffering like I did those first couple of hikes. So anyway, it's a lot of times it's said on the trail, we all have a fear, and the fear is the unknown. And I think in my case, my fear was my feet. And I guess I get that from the military, because it was all about taking care of your feet when you're on when you're in the military. But I only bought 2 pairs of shoes when I first started this trail. I bought these over at, I believe I got these at J&H. This is what's called an on-cloud trail shoe. You see how it's got the support things here on the bottom. The reason I bought this shoe when I very first started out, and this is a fairly expensive shoe, I think this was like $140. If you can hear this in the video, you hear this squeaking sound in here. This is a fully waterproof shoe, and I found out on the trail that for my feet to be able to sustain those type of miles, I needed a waterproof shoe. And as long as you don't get into water above your ankle right here, this shoe kept my feet dry. And so I wore this shoe a lot on the trail. If I knew it was going to be really wet and I watched the forecast before I hit the trail, I'd always wear this shoe, and this kept my feet dry. And when it wasn't dry, or when it was dry on the trail, I ended up going with these Ultra Lone Peak 4s. This shoe here, look at the bottom of it. If you're not familiar with trail shoes, see how flat this is. And so the theory behind this type of shoe is that our feet, if you look down at our regular tennis shoes, like I'm wearing Nikes right now, your feet are in like a, if you look down at your toes, are pointed like this. And that's not really the way I understand this. God intended for us to walk and to move, that your feet naturally stay flat like this. And so if you look at the wide toe box on this, this allows your foot to naturally do the way God intended it to do. Man, oh man, these shoes were comfortable. If your feet do happen to get wet, they dry out real quick. And so I was sold on Lone Peak 4s Ultras. Now I had some 3.5s, not to get real technical here, but the 3.5s just didn't fit my feet like these 4.0s do. And I got these off Amazon. You can Google search that or Amazon it, and you can sort of price shop these. And I ended up getting a real good buy on these for like $100. So that's what I ended up wearing. Because of my fear of not wanting my feet to get wet when I was on the trail, I always kept an extra pair of Ultra inserts that I would keep in a plastic bag inside my pack, and in case they did get submerged. And I always wore water shoes. I ended up buying some $20 cheap China-made import water shoes that you can find all over the internet. And there was a lot of times I just had a pair of Crocs with me. And so when I would get to a water crossing, again, you know, a lot of guys and girls that I hiked with, they just plowed right on through the creeks and crossed and kept their feet wet. I just never did it. But I would always switch and change over to my water shoes. Now, I always wore these gaiters. These are Ultra gaiters here to keep sticks and stuff getting down into my shoes, which drives me crazy when I'm on the trail. And whether you get these from Ultra or Dirty Girls, as I see a lot of people wear them. These Ultras has a hook right here on the front of the shoe, and these just simply hook in here like this, and then they go, you know, up over your leg, and then they stretch down over the shoe. And then what I liked about these, this has a tab on the back. If you notice, see this Velcro that comes down like this, and so when I put this down on the back of my shoe, this Velcro piece is on the back of this gaiter, and it just goes down in here, and then you close that tab back, and that way it just keeps this all the way over your shoe. And I wore these every time I hiked because I couldn't stand getting pebbles, and when I was in deep brush, getting stuff stuck down in the side of my shoe. And with that, I ended up wearing just a no-see or a small ankle wicking sock. An insert like this. I would wear this on both feet here, and then for my go-to stockings, and I say stockings, that's not a term that we use in hiking, but because I do 18th century, we call it stockings. But my foot socks, these are all Darn Toughs. I stay with Darn Toughs. These are merino wool. They're high-grade merino wool. These are expensive. They come in just hundreds of different colors, but the thing about it is, these things are like $25 a pair. You got to buy them from a specialty store or online, but they got a lifetime guarantee, and you keep your receipt with them, and Darn Tough will give you a brand new pair back if you wear those out. I mean, who gives a lifetime guarantee on stockings? So that's what I ended up wearing. I'm going to run through really quick because I'm going to cover a lot of gear here about what was in my pack. I tried to, before I put this stuff together this afternoon, to do this video on what was in my pack and what shoes I wore, is I only put stuff in here that I ended up ending the trail with. I sort of went back over what I started with a year ago. In an earlier video, I said that I ended up not really having any of the same stuff afterwards, but as I evolved on this trail and what I learned was what was working for me and wasn't working, I just left it. There's a general rule of thumb: if you're not touching a piece of equipment that's in your kit the whole time you're on the trail, then you probably don't need it, other than a couple of emergency, desperate life or death pieces of equipment that you might not use and hope you don't use, but it's in my pack in case I need it, and that's in my first aid kit. So, hey Brandon, I see Brandon on here, and Raven. Those are two people. Hey Becky, that's a friend of mine here in Winchester. Brandon's the guy I got closest to. He's a two-time tour in the Iraqi war that I hiked with most of the trail. Raven is a girl. She's a trauma nurse down in Somerset that works in recovery. She became a sister to me. And a side note, let me tell you about Raven. She's on here watching right now. Raven was the first female in Kentucky to be drawn on an elk tag. And 12 years ago, I watched a YouTube video of her shooting a big bull elk here in Kentucky, and she tagged out on that elk tag, and the first female to put one down under that program. And she was actually hunting with everybody in Kentucky remembers. Kentucky, a Field Tim Farmer was with her. And so that was just epic to see her do that. And Brandon's become like a brother to me since I've met him on the trail. It's been said when you hike these long trails, you'll meet at least two people that will become lifelong friends, and that you'll end up doing life together. And that's more than the truth in my case. I met people that I know their kids' names, their dog's name, what they do for a living. I know their hurts, their habits, their hang-ups, and we just share life together, and these people have come real close to me. So let me buzz through my equipment real quick. When I first went, the only thing that I can say that I disagree with is when I went to an orientation, they said there wasn't any need to have any navigational devices on your phone. Not going to say I agree with that. I ended up downloading, I have an iPhone 10. I downloaded an app called All Trails. The entire Sheltowee Trace trail is on that app. I downloaded it. I would always make sure I had it downloaded, the trace map, before I hit the trail. I can tell you that because I had that app on my phone, and those that hike the trail with me that are on here watching me are going to call me out on this and say that's the truth. He's telling you the gospel. That app probably saved me, I'm going to say 6, 8, probably 10 times from getting really bad lost on the trail. That it just saved my ass. It really did. I mean, I would have been turned around. And you have to understand this trail, sometimes you can be 10, 12, 13, 15 miles from the nearest road. So I would strongly suggest that if you're going to hike a Pacific trail, especially a long trail like I just completed, you need to have an app with you. I also bought these trail maps that come on the Sheltowee Trace. There's actually 6 sections here, and whatever section I was on, I kept this with me. I referred to these on a daily basis when I was on the trail. I carried a small Guardian knife with a clip on it that I kept in the front of my shorts. I used it almost every day on the trail. I kept K-tape. I didn't keep it in a container like this. This can be just bought at Walmart. This K-tape I used for everything, especially the first 2 or 3 months that we hiked, because I got so many blisters. I'd wrap my feet up in that. And I also kept on my hiking post, and that's a subject for controversy too. On my hiking post, I keep duct tape here, and it can be used for a lot of different things. Blisters, equipment repair. These are black diamonds. I carried these the whole entire trail on every section, but I also hiked with people, and Brandon was one of them, that never brought hiking sticks on the trail. I don't think I could have made it through some places, especially some high elevation across some cliffs, that I did without them, or ended up falling in a mud puddle along these riverbanks without them. But it's just a personal choice. I think that I learned to push my body through the woods. It gave me a lot of, helped my stamina a lot. And so I was big on hiking posts. This is something I was somewhat embarrassed about, but this is probably one of the top 5 important things in my pack, and this was Body Glide. I wished I'd known about this when I served in the U.S. Army. It's like a deodorant stick. And I'm just not going to assume everybody watching this video is a expert long trail hiker, but this goes everywhere. This goes down into this area, and I actually wiped down my shoulders and where my pack strap was, especially in the hot months. This saved me from being chafed and blistered, and I can tell you, there's people on here watching this that suffered from chafing really bad, but I never got chafed wearing this because I had always wore like a anti-friction powder like this. You see this at a lot of the farm implement stores. I'm not going to say this isn't any good, but I ditched this and never took a small container of this with me, but I did carry one of these, a smaller version. I'll show you. This is the one that I wiped on before I left for the trail every week, and I carried a small version of that. As far as, I'm probably not doing this in sequence, but I carried pepper spray with me. This was mainly being a career police officer. I mean, this is police issue. I wore this on my pack right here. My concern was not as much something hurting me out there in the woods as much as crazy ass people you run up on the trail. I run up on a couple of dope growers down in the McKee, Kentucky area that were walking through the woods with fertilizer and buckets, and I knew they wasn't watering tomato plants that far off the road, and that was just a safety thing for me in case I encountered somebody I had trouble with on the trail. A lot of people do ask me about a handgun. I carried a handgun with me the whole entire trace, 333 miles. As far as permits, you'll have to check your local laws. I mean, I sort of fall in a little bit different category in that because I am a retired police detective in good standing. I have what's called a LEOSA, carry concealed permit, which now in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, there is no carry concealed permit requirement, and that changed in legislation this year. But I carried a 38 hammerless revolver. This was a gun that I carried on my ankle on an ankle holster. I carried the first 2 rounds in this handgun were shot primarily for snakes and dogs, because we did encounter some pretty vicious dogs on the trail. I never had to discharge and shoot a dog, thank God. I was able to always get them off of me. But again, this was a people safety thing for me, is the people I encountered. You get in a lot of them really rural areas, you just, you run up on some people that are real questionable. I never had any real problem that I want to talk about on this video, but I carry a handgun everywhere I go. Headlamps. This is a Nightcore rechargeable headlamp that a lot of hikers carry. They prefer this because it can be recharged with their battery pack that they carry on the trail that they keep their iPhone charged up with. I ended up carrying this one the whole time, and this came from Lowe's for like $14.95, and this has 3 different high beam settings on it. It has a red to hike during the night with. I just simply, this operates on 3 AAA batteries in the back, and I kept 3 extra batteries with me because I did do a lot of night hiking into the dark and early in the morning. And I just simply preferred this because the way the back of it was shaped, and it was a whole lot more comfortable for me. I think this was a must on the trail because it was always so wet that I ended up buying at a backpacker store over at J&H in Lexington, because every time you'd stop, you sit on a log to eat or take a break or to filter water. But I also had one of these at times, and this is $1 at the dollar store, and I just cut this down. This is a windshield brake, and I also put this in my hammock at night to hold in heat. And I saw a lot of hikers do this, and it's just a real economical way. Instead of buying this here that ends up, I think these were like 15, 20 bucks, you put these in the back sleeve of your backpack. I'm running around to the back here, talking about insects and problems on the trail. I treated everything that I had, my backpack, the outside of my hammock, all my clothing, my socks, everything except my underclothing that I wore in the summer months. I treated it with perithium. I don't know a lot about this chemical, but I can tell you that it's been said that this is fatal, can be fatal to felines. So, and I have 2 house cats, so I'd always make sure that I sprayed in at least 3 to 4 days before I went on the trail. I saw a lot of people on the trail that were infested with chiggers and seed ticks, turkey ticks is a lot of times what you call them. I only had 1 tick this year on me. I circled it with a dark Sharpie's marker, wiped it with, and I'll show you in my first aid kit, I always carried an alcohol wipe with me, and I wiped it off as soon as I picked it off. But I did treat everything, and then in the real hot summer months, I wore DEET, like 35%. I did a lot of research about that, and it seems like the 25-35% is just as good in DEET. And I would spray the bottom of my legs, the outer part of my shoes. Now this perithium, I was telling you, I sprayed every bit of my equipment with this, but I also did my shoes and backpack with this too. The last but not least, I kept everything in these 2 waterproof bags. This ended up being my food bag that I hung with a bear bag. I kept a rope with a carabiner on it, and I used the PCT method of hanging. I can truthfully tell you that I hung a bear bag every single night on the entire trail that I slept. You didn't have to tell me twice. I mean, there was a lot of bear activity. We saw a lot of bears, heard a lot of bears. And so I wasn't going to take a chance. I made sure that when I slept at night in my hammock that I didn't have toothpaste, an energy bar, chewing gum, anything that had any kind of odor to it whatsoever. It went 20 feet up in the tree, away from my camp. And we also tried at all possible to always not cook where we ended up eating. Where we ended up sleeping, because I just didn't want the smell on me when I was asleep at night. These 2 things right here, I carried, I don't know why this is out, but I carried a plastic spoon with me. This is how I ate all my meals. A lot of people carried water bladders in their backpack. I preferred not to, because I consumed a lot of water when I was on the trail. But the reason I didn't prefer the water bladder in my pack, because I could never tell when I was coming to a water source how low I was on water. So I carried 3 liters in these smart bottles. I carried 1 on my shoulder strap and 2 in the back of my backpack with me. And I can tell you that I truthfully, and I'm going to show you that here in my kit right here. This is the bag that, everything you see right here, this is basically other than what I've showed you, this is all I carried in my pack, everything, other than my sleeping system. This is a Osprey, very lightweight, only weighs an ounce. And I'll run through here real quick of everything I carried. I carried, because I did a lot of climbing around rocks, I tried to keep my hands off ledges because of rattlesnakes up into the rocky higher elevations, but I always wore a pair of gloves. These were lifesavers for me this last weekend because I got in 24-degree weather. I actually had the 2 bigger ones that you can get at Walmart for like 10. They're double the size of these hand warmers. It's the same product for $5. You can get these in the sporting goods stores. I kept 1 down in the back of my hoodie, and I put 2 of these inside my gloves to stay warm. This is this absorbent towel I kept with me to wipe my feet off when I came out of a creek or riverbank. This was my bathroom kit right here. I kept wet wipes with me. I preferred that over toilet paper, and my privy, if you will, trowel to dig a cat hole. Every time we went to the bathroom, I carried a wristwatch with me on my arm because it was one I had when I was in the military, believe it or not, many years ago, and it just simply had a dial that lit up at night, and I could, if my phone was on charger while I was asleep at night, I could just simply push this and tell what time of night it was when I was laying in my hammock. I kept a small thing of Repel 40% deep with me in the summer months, and I kept a Benadryl itch relief stick with me just simply to put on bug bites because it drives me crazy trying to sleep at night. I was talking about Body Glide. This is a small travel thing of Body Glide to keep on your shoulders and your crotch area to keep you from getting chafed. Deal changer. This for me was absolutely a must to have on trail. I used it even in the cold months to keep me from chafing. I kept an extra lighter with me. I guess this is sort of a military thing for me. This is a trauma pack. It weighs absolutely nothing. I never touched this, never used one of these, thank God. But in my thinking, it was always important to keep this with me on the trail in case somebody fell and just had a gashing head wound or something. I could bandage them up until we could get to a hilltop to get phone service to call for rescue. I have in my hammock, I have a cable that goes across the top of my hammock that keeps my bug net. And I had this little Caribbean on here, and I just simply hung this at night, and this is how I charge my cell phone in here. And because, I needed, I never had phone service, very rarely, but what was more important to me is that I needed to navigate off All Trails app. So I'd always keep that phone charged at night. There was some people, this is my water system. These Sawyer squeezes, this is the big one or the medium sized one. These used to be real expensive, and I saw that you can buy these at Walmart now for like $39, which is, they were a lot more expensive than that when I first looked at them. But this was my water system. There was people on the trail that I saw that never filtered their water. I did. I was just absolutely convinced that I wasn't going to take a chance of getting beaver fever, as they call it. There's something upstream of me, because of civilization, a chemical, or a dead deer or bear or elk laying in the stream, and I wasn't going to take a chance of getting dysentery. And so when I would get low on water, I would stop at a stream and I would scoop this full of water and then attach my Sawyer squeeze, and I would always filter every drop of water that I had. Again, for my toiletries, that's all I took with me. I'd wipe myself down at night to give some type of normalcy that I had been cleaned up. My battery pack for my phone with an extra cord in it to charge my phone. I brushed my teeth every morning, every night. Kept a toothbrush and toothpaste with me. I used triple ointment and bacteria for some cuts that I had and blisters on my feet at night to help me heal up. And last but not least, my first aid kit. That was it. I kept everything in a plastic bag, and in this first aid kit is some KT tape. Here's an anti-diarrhea chewable pills in case I got sick. Thank God I can't say that happened to me. On the trail, I kept ibuprofen, 800 milligrams and 200 milligrams. I kept Benadryl with me. Probably I'm not going to get into a lot of that. I kept the Benadryl with me in case I was snake bitten. There's a lot of arguing about does Benadryl actually help you, but it's also been said there was a lot of dogs with me on the trail. If they're bitten, they can take a Benadryl. And it's just one of them things. It depends on how much venom they get in them, how hard they were hit and bit. And it just depends on the condition you or the dog's in. But I'd always heard that I'd rather took the Benadryl and see if it would have helped me more than it would have hurt me. I never used these. There's a couple of needles in here. But I did use those the first couple of hikes until my feet got toughened up where I had blisters. And there's a couple of alcohol wipes in here in case I got something I need to antibacteria. And I also wiped the one tick bite I got on the trail. I wiped off with that or alcohol wipe. So guys, sorry to run through that so quick, but that's all I really had in my pack with me. This stuff that, like I discussed with you, was stuff I used every single day, every night, every morning on the trail. So I appreciate you all joining me. Again, let me reiterate that there's no absolute right way and there's no absolute wrong way. This is just the gear that worked for me, and this is the gear that made me comfortable. And everything I showed you today I used while I was on the trail. I'm going to talk about on the next video the food I ate and the food that I hated on the trail and I quit taking it with me. And I'll tell you about how I did coffee on the trail, and that'll sort of wrap it up. And so I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something, or I've helped you if you're considering doing a long hike. I want to thank my team AWOL. That's a lot of them's come on here today while I've been talking about my hike, and they're just like brother and sisters to me. So in your comments below, just list anything you'd like to see me talk about. I'll do food next week, and I appreciate you guys joining me. Hope you have a great day on this Veterans Day, and thanks for watching.